What's happening, everybody? Welcome into a brand new episode of Crossed Up. Anthony Sanfilippo's here. I'm Bob Wankel. Early on a Tuesday morning after just a wretched, dismal Phillies Game 2 loss to the Braves in the NLDS. Phillies had an opportunity, as everyone knows by now, to bury the Braves, and that did not happen, Anthony, and it did not happen for several reasons, which I guess if you're listening to this show today, if you're listening to this podcast, you're really into misery. So let's just jump right into this here and talk about it.
Oh man, that's certainly a gut punch last night. I'm not certain that I agree with everybody on some of the complaints. I look at the game and I know a lot of people say worst loss in history, and I mean it's a bad one when you can put them up there. But there have been some other bad playoff losses that were I think worse than last night, especially considering the situation that they're still 1-1 coming home in a 5-game series. Like,
can I get your top three? Because I actually think in real time, independent of what happens next, like I actually think that was worse than the Cliff Lee game in 2011. I do. That was like a different kind of 4-0 for me. I know that the Braves are a much better team, and it was like a matter of time before they did something, but I go last night over Cliff Lee. Maybe there's some recency bias there. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I mean, I was at the Cliff Lee game in the stands, and that sucked. To be honest with you, it sucked. But it didn't have the kind of drama that last night did. So I would put last night ahead of Cliff Lee for sure. I think you got to probably go back a little bit, and I can show my age and give you a couple from way back. But I mean, the one that probably most of our listeners got to remember is Game 4 of the 93 World Series.
Yeah, that was like the 15-14 game, right?
Yeah, I mean, that by far is to me the worst that the Phillies have ever suffered in the playoffs. I mean, you want to go back to the team that won in 80. I mean, that group, they had a couple that were really bad, and one is Black Friday against the Dodgers. Bad umpire call, and then Greg Luzinski should have been replaced by Jerry Martin, makes an error in left field, lets the Dodgers win the game. I mean, you know
that we're in for a good show when we kick it off by ranking the worst, most infuriating and frustrating playoff losses in franchise history.
And then the other one, I mean, you got to think, Bob, in 1980 when they play the Astros, and what is widely considered the greatest league championship series, maybe the greatest baseball playoff series of all time. 5-game series goes 5 games, and 4 of the 5 go extra innings. They lost a game at home to the Astros 1-0 in extra innings with that offense, and just to not score in a game, in a playoff game at home. I mean, that probably has to rank up there worse as well. So, I mean, I think that there have been a few. But this is certainly probably top 5, I would think.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that sort of, for me, separates what happened last night is that you don't feel like that and credit to the Braves, right? Like Austin Riley, huge at bat, great play by Harris to end the game. Like they bared down, they got good bullpen action last night. Like it's not like the Braves didn't show up or they didn't play, but I think for me, the takeaway is that you felt like the Phillies handed this game away.
They did.
This is a game that they controlled, that they should have won, and they didn't win because they didn't do what they needed to do. And I was talking to some different people last night, trying to get some different perspectives. And one of the things I had heard was like, that's baseball, man. Like that's just the way it is sometimes. Like, and I go, okay, like, I understand that there's some randomness to this whole thing, that things happen, that it's not always going to go your way, especially when you're playing a good team. But I came back to this game, and I woke up this morning. I'll be honest with you, it bothered me to the point last night where I woke up a couple times in the middle of the night. Have you ever had those losses, as a fan, or just in general, where you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're like, did that really fucking happen? Like you're still trying to process it almost. And I got to be honest with you, I started thinking through the game, and I think it comes down to 3 different things, right? And I think you agree with me. And it didn't come down to the one thing that everyone's going to talk about today, turn on WIP. And this isn't a shot at Sports Talk Radio, but everyone's going to go crazy about Rob Thompson, right? I didn't think this game had anything to do with Rob Thompson.
No, not
I
at all.
truly didn't. So I guess let's parse through the details here, and let's first start with what it wasn't. And in our opinion, in my opinion, it was not Rob Thompson. So the key decision that everyone is going crazy about this morning, and I believe that Marcus Hayes of the Daily News wrote a column about this, like saying that Rob Thompson blew the game with Zach Wheeler's decision, or the Zach Wheeler decision in the 7th inning.
Come on, Marcus, be better than that. That's ridiculous.
What are we doing here? So, and I know a lot of people feel the same, but Wheeler comes back out for the 7th inning. Anthony, how many hits had Zach Wheeler allowed entering the 7th inning?
1.
What was it? A home run? What was it?
It was a single to right field.
Yeah, it was a single to right field and a run scored on it, right?
Unearned.
Yeah, and why did the run score? Because shortstop couldn't.
Trey Turner
Yeah.
decided to take a relay throw from the dirt in the infield. I mean,
yeah.
and try to backhand it. Like, it just didn't make any sense. If you're trying to be in throwing position, Bob, I mean, come on, you coach the game, right? And when you teach your cutoff people, and it was so funny. Like, I talk about this on Sunday softball. I mean, this is how basic this stuff is, that I can talk about it with a softball team, okay, in a beer league. But when you go to take a cutoff, you want your glove to be towards home so that way you're in a throwing position, because you got to come up being ready to throw. And he's backhanding a throw from the outfield. Like, it doesn't make it makes zero sense to me.
It was an unforced error. There was no reason to field the ball like that. There was really no play either. Like, obviously Acuna can fly, but he's not going first to home on a single to right. That's in front of the right fielder. It's not like Castellanos was moving horizontally to go get that ball. It's not like it was in the gap. He cut it off and it was a single. It was a base hit. So like, why is Turner fielding the ball? It just made no sense. It was just totally sloppy, totally careless. And it was an unforced error that in some ways did shift the momentum of the game. And like, I know that that's going to be a big word today, momentum. And is momentum real? And I would tell you that all you have to do is look at last night's events to know that momentum really isn't all that real, because the Phillies had all of it and then some, and then they didn't, So like, I don't think that beyond what happened last night, like that the Phillies are all of a sudden going to say like, oh, we've lost the momentum, the series is over. They blew a game 2 last year in the NLDS. We know that. Certainly the circumstances were a little different. They simply were beat in that game. But I have to tell you, like, that play for me is just, it's unacceptable. It truly is. And I know that he made a great defensive play to help preserve the game 1 win, and he's a great player, and we know that. And, I can't get on this show and start ripping him to pieces, but it's just like, hey, man, this is the playoffs. Like, you got to bear down and prevent the things that you can prevent. Like, that's not baseball. Like, when you chalk it up and say, well, that's baseball, sometimes things go wrong for you. Like, that's something that was entirely within his control. It gave the Braves a run. It did turn the feel of the game a little bit. And so then back to the Wheeler thing in the 7th, he goes out there, gives up a single, right, to start the inning to Olsen. You good there? You take him out at that point?
Well, so I mean, so let's just go through, and he was asked. Rob Thompson asked him in the dugout how he felt going into the 7th inning, and Wheeler's like, I feel good. He's like, you want to have somebody up and ready just in case, fine, and that's what they did. And so Wheeler goes out and gives up the single. Now here's where you got to the one spot where I could sit there and this is not, no one's questioning Rob Thompson on this, but we kind of did the other day or yesterday when we talked about the game 1. He's got Alvarado warming up. Not that, of course, Alvarado is your best reliever. You want him to come in a tough spot. And in this case, I guess, you're talking about it being a tough spot if you have runners on base. But you're kind of getting down toward the bottom of the lineup, right? And so the bottom of that Braves lineup, you have Rosario's a lefty down there, and you got Michael Harris as a lefty batting 9. But like the bigger bats are right-handed. And so, all right, well, you got Alvarado up. You're probably not going to go Alvarado to the right-handers who are batting 5, 6. So that's why he keeps Wheeler in the game there, right? And so he gets who do they have? Ozuna. He strikes out Ozuna with a hell of a pitch to strike out Ozuna, right? And then he makes the one mistake he makes the entire game and on a pitch, and Travis d'Arnaud hits it into the seats, and that makes it 4-3. Like, I mean, how do you can't question leaving Wheeler in there, because if you're going to bring Alvarado in, the 7 hitters Rosario. Now they're pinch hitting with Pilar, but you like that matchup. You like Alvarado versus Pilar. If they keep Rosario in, you love it. If not, you like the matchup there. The 8 hitter is.
What if I told you, and this is something that people will point to, that he is 9 for 24 with 2 home runs lifetime with a 1.090 OPS against Zach Wheeler, right? Like,
That's d'Arnaud.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
Like, right, and that's the thing. Like,
how did you do the first two? How did you do the first 2 times he faced him?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, you look at the velocity. Was he throwing 98 at that point? No. But you're talking about 96. It's not like he didn't fall off the cliff or anything like that. So I know, like, it's frustrating because and really, I think what's super frustrating about it from a fan perspective, from Phillies perspective, period, is that you said it. It's the one mistake he made all night, and they capitalized on it. Like, they were 1 for 1 in capitalizing on Zach Wheeler mistakes.
Yeah.
And their first 3 runs of the game, they took advantage of an unforced error by Trey Turner, and then they capitalized on the one truly good swing that they had to that point. And they have 3 runs on the board. Meanwhile, the Phillies are peppering you through 4 innings, 5 innings, and they're stranding a dozen runners. I mean, would they end up stranding 11, I believe, and is it 2 for 8 with runners in scoring position? Yeah. It actually feels a lot worse than that. I'm surprised looking at this now that it's only 2 for 8, but I mean, they missed so many opportunities, including the first inning in which they scored 1 run, to really create some distance and separate in this game. And you felt like they should be up 5, 6, 7, nothing. And it's just a matter of time before things kind of go sideways on you there. So I look at this and say, Trey Turner, you got to be better in that spot. Phillies offense, you got to bear down and be a little bit better with runners in scoring position. Like, you got to be able to hit more than that to beat this Braves team. And then, what's the third element of this? Like, because when I look at it,
it's Jeff Hoffman's pitch. And Real Muto gave an explanation that I don't agree with. And I'll say this about that pitch, Bob. The one thing that the Phillies have done throughout the entirety of the first 2 games against the Braves is they've attacked. They've attacked on offense, stealing bases, aggressive against fastballs against these pitchers. I mean, they really were all over Max Fried's fastball early, and really should have just, that's when you say, they missed a couple opportunities because they were on it, and they were just spitting on that curve. And they've attacked the hitters with the fastballs and say, you know what, you guys stink on fastballs 97 and above. We're going to keep throwing them at you until you prove to us that you can hit it. And then they approached that at bat against Riley. They got him swinging on 2 fastballs early in the – well, he looked at 1, and then he swung through 1. Then Hoffman throws another fastball up in the zone, just misses the top of the zone, and Riley lays off it. It was a good, layoff by Riley, because that's a pitch that he had struck out on a couple times. 2-2, he throws another fastball.
Mm-hmm.
And this one he kind of yanks, right? It's out of the zone. Now you're at 3-2. You have an open base. You have Soto ready to come in to face Matt Olson. Why are you going off speed at that point? Like, don't be afraid to walk the hitter. I know it's the go-ahead run. I know. Like, at that point, I don't understand why you're like, okay, look, I'm going to go with what we know against this guy. And if he lays off of a fastball, or I pull it out of the zone, or it's high or whatever, he ends up just walking. And then we go left on Olson, which Olson's not very good against lefties. So, like, why not? And instead, they went to a slider, and slider is Hoffman's best pitch. Too, I'm not trying to make pretend like it's a bad pitch. It's his best pitch. And Riley one-armed it. I mean, in all honesty, if you watch the replay, he one-arms that ball out of the ballpark. But I don't like the call. And I know Real Muto explained it, saying about laying off a pitch, and the last one was yanked out of the zone. It was the one time where I felt like the Phillies were pitching to not have put the runner on base and ended up costing themselves. And
Right.
again, so I mean, that's the third thing. I just think it was a bad idea, bad decision in that spot.
I personally would have invited the Soto Olsen matchup in the 8th, because if you don't clear that spot there, is Kimbrel getting Olsen in the 9th? Like, what do
Right.
you?
Yeah.
I don't love that. Like, and so I actually tweeted that. I'm like, like I would almost say, like, come on, let's go clear this part of the order right now. Like, give me this matchup right now so that we don't have to deal with it in the 9th inning. And I mean, that's I guess kind of picky and somewhat, all right, man, cool. Like, you're a major league manager, I guess now. But I just didn't love that. Like, I would have been totally fine having that showdown in that spot. A couple people had said to me, and like, again, when I say a couple people, I don't like mean my buddy, but like some people I just kind of reached out to and said, what'd you think about that sequencing? And they said, he had an okay swing at the one fastball, but otherwise he was pretty locked up against it. And you could see he was kind of diving, looking for slider. And they were like, we were really surprised that they didn't just stay on plan with the velocity in that spot. And so,
Yeah,
not so much about the lack of willingness to put them on, but just more like go attack them, like,
well, that's what I'm saying. They went a little conservative there.
yeah.
They were worried about it. And why? Because he looked at one and you pulled another. I mean, that's part of it, man. Like, guess what? Sometimes you just got to stick with what you thought was going to work all along.
Right.
They got Riley out 2 games. He went 1 for 4 the first game with a single, but they threw him a ton of fastballs. They got him 3 times before he comes up in the 8th inning with fastballs. Like, why are you getting away from that? It doesn't make any sense. Like, that bothered me. That bothered me a little bit. Like, that's not the game plan. The game plan was not to throw him sliders that he's looking for. So I don't know.
And then you get to the 9th inning, and everyone wants to talk about the Michael Harris play with Bryce Harper getting doubled off first base. It was a great play. It could be, if the Braves go on to win this series, one of those season-defining plays. Really, I mean, that could be an all-timer. That's one that they'll be playing in Truist Park for the next 25 years. Bryce Harper gets doubled off. I don't understand why he was 8 feet around the second base bag, but at the same time, I don't care. It's almost like people want to fixate on the base running mistake and how do you get doubled off in that spot. Like, all right. And I'm not saying that who was coming up behind him in that spot? Was that Stott?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, is there a possibility there that Stott gets it done? Yeah, sure. Like, you certainly want to get Bryson Stott a shot at it in the 9th inning. We know how tough he is and how clutch he is and all those things. But like, to me, like, okay, like the game was lost in the 8th inning. Like
I mean, but this is what, and I put the tweet out, Bob, on this because I just want to kind of point out that sometimes we get so caught up in being aggressive and forcing the other team to make a mistake that sometimes you forget that being aggressive often leads to your own mistakes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't cost them the game. They lost the game before this happened. But you got to give your batters a chance, man. Like, if you're Bryce Harper, why do you think you can't score from second base if that ball hits the wall?
Yeah.
You really, if that ball comes off the wall, it's an easy run. Like, I mean, really, he's going up to try and catch it. If he doesn't catch it, you're scoring easy.
I think it's kind of interesting. If you go back and listen to our shows in April and May, and the Phillies are really struggling out of the gate, they're inconsistent. One of the things that we kept talking about was the base running. Like, how many stupid base running mistakes can a team make? And they were just doing it at such a high frequency. It was constant. And you're like, this is a group of veteran players. What the hell are they doing? And it's funny. Like, you look at this series. And really, this postseason, I should say the entire postseason, you had Dusty Wathan with his issues against the Marlins. You look at first inning, like, Bohm gets no jump on a base hit to left field. I know that it's a fast infield at Truist. Like, the ball gets out there quick. The grass, the ball moves on the grass. But, like, there was no shot of him scoring on a base hit from second base with 2 outs because the jump was terrible. Like, Wathan had no opportunity to send Bohm in the first inning there. None. So, like, where's the secondary? Like, I feel like we're talking about, like, I feel like I'm talking about high school baseball right now. Like, why was your lead so short? Where was your secondary lead? Why were you at third base when the ball? Why were you touching third base when the ball was in the left fielder's glove? Like what the hell happened there? Harper getting doubled off in the ninth inning. Like the base running stuff is starting to show up here again in the playoffs, and it's like, come on, guys, like this game's hard enough. Let's.
Yeah, well, I mean,
listen, I know there's still 5 bases in game 1. That's great. Like I'm not going to overlook that. That's real. That helped. But like, right. This is something now where I'm like, are we going to start talking about base running again? Base running in the NLDS? Like, come on, man.
Well, I mean, this is a perfect example of if you're going to beat the Braves, you got to be on your A game the entire time. You cannot give them breaks, and making 2 errors in the field and making a base running mistake, while neither ultimately costs you the game, they allows the errors allow the Braves to kind of stay in the game, and the base running mistake takes away your chance to come back in the game at the end. And that's the difference, sometimes. And it's these little things, one bad pitch, one bad decision on a pitch, like they don't throw this. It wasn't like the Phillies played a bad game. They didn't play a bad game, but they made enough tiny cuts to have a wound open up and bleed them out. And that was really what it was. And look, you got to suck it up. Sometimes this happens. If the Phillies are as mentally tough and resilient as we all believe they are, and they are, they don't let this bother them a little bit, and they come out and they play their a great game again on Wednesday night.
Well, I look forward to opening up social media for the remainder of the day and seeing 2 varying opinions. One, oh, they let them off the hook, and now Atlanta has all the momentum and the series is over. That'll be one.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one will be, they forced the split. That's all they needed. Like that, it's all good. They're coming back home. This is what you wanted. Like, which is true, I guess. Like if you would have said to me on Saturday morning, Phillies make this a 3-game series, they have home field advantage, and in the game that they don't, they're going to put Zach Wheeler back on the mound. I would feel pretty good about that, right? And I still do. But like, you're winning a game by 4 runs in the late innings. The team is dead. The series is over, and you lose the game. Like, so there's some nuance here. Like, there's a little bit of like a weaving between those 2 realities. Like, it's not that the season's over and that the Phillies are screwed. They remain in a nice spot. But like, yeah, you really missed an opportunity. And guess what? Like, I mean, we both said yesterday at the end of the show, hey, I think the Braves will bounce back and probably steal game 2 tonight. Like somehow. That's not how I had it planned out in my mind. I was thinking more of like a conventional 5-3 type of loss, maybe. I don't know what to think about this series, and I haven't from the start, right? Like, well, I feel like I'm in a pretzel right now. I'm like,
so here's how I look at it, Bob. Here's how I look at it. Look, we're reacting in the moment, which is what we do, and that's all good, and I get it, and it's fine. But in the end, whenever this series ends, whether it's in 4 or 5 games, and we look back on it, I think that's the time where you sit there and say, yeah, they let that one slip away, and that cost them the series. Or they win the series, and it's just like, well, we expected this to be a long series against the Braves, so we always knew that they were going to lose 1, maybe 2.
Sure.
Right? I mean, so it really comes down to what the ultimate result is, to determine how you look at game 2 ultimately in the long term, right? Because if you win
does it become that Cliff Lee game? Because when I think about the Cardinal series, I know everyone, not everyone, but like people talk about the final game, 1-0, and the fly balls by Ibanez and Utley getting caught in the warning track, and how frustrating that was. And it was. But I always go back to the Cliff Lee game. I'm like, well, they lost that series right then. Like, and it was a game 2. They had the opportunity to take control of it. They didn't. And then things got away from them. And like, is that what this game's going to be? And the Phillies have an opportunity here this week to ensure that that's not what this game becomes, And I guess my question to you now is like, is game 3 like absolutely essential? Because I do find it difficult. I do, to see a scenario where, Aaron Nola goes out, they lose the game. He doesn't throw the ball particularly great. And now they're they're basically in an elimination spot in game 4, and then they've got to win that and then send it back to Atlanta. Like,
Yeah,
it's not accountable to win 2 straight games, but I mean, I don't think that that's going to happen personally.
Yeah, well, the way you got to look at it is saying this is, again, still a favorable matchup for the Phillies. You have Nola pitching at home, and the Braves, they haven't announced their game 3 starter, and I'm starting to think it's not going to be Bryce Elder.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I'm not certain what they're going to do. They may go a bullpen game. They may throw AJ Smith-Shawver, who hasn't pitched in forever, and have him on a short leash, and then make it a bullpen game. I mean, I don't think so. The matchup still favors the Phillies in game 3. So you really want to go out and get game 3 because you're going to get Strider in 4.
Oh, this is what every Phillies fan really wanted: the season resting on Aaron Nola. I can't wait. Phillies fans can't lose because they either win the game and probably the series, or they get to bitch about Nola for the next 8 months until he goes somewhere else. So,
yeah. But look, I mean, I don't think it's impossible to force it back to game 5. Again, I still think the series is going 5. So whether they lose game 3 or lose game 4, I think they're going to lose one of these 2 games.
Mm-hmm.
I still think the series is going 5 games back in Atlanta, but at least you go back to Atlanta game 5 with Wheeler back on the mound again.
Yeah.
And knowing that Max Fried is not himself, right? And then you're probably getting him again in game 5. I can't imagine that they would, if they don't want to throw Elder in 3, I can't imagine that they would throw him in 5. So I look at the 3 games left and I say, Phillies have a pitching advantage in 2 of the 3 games. You win 2 of them. However you piece this together, if you win 2 of these 3 games, you're advancing to the National League Championship Series because you have it, and you have a pitching advantage in 2 of the 3 games. So Phillies, in my mind, are still ahead here, even though it's 1-1 when you look at it.
Just feels like so much is at stake. This isn't like a traditional NLDS in the sense that you're still 2 rounds away from the World Series. Like, it feels like you're going to win a championship if you figure it out this week. It really feels like that because you're going to have home field now in the NLCS because it's going to be Arizona. Yeah. Barring a total collapse, it's going to be Arizona. Like, that's a favorable matchup. Credit to the Diamondbacks. I mean, they're 4-0 this postseason. They've won all 4 games on the road. Like, that's super impressive. I'm not trying to overlook it, but we've been saying here all along that the winner of the series is probably your World Series winner. And you start to see the way things are unfolding, and it sure feels like that's the case, at least to get to the World Series. We'll see what happens in the American League here. But it's like, man, this is going to be, if you ultimately bow out here, this is going to feel like a massive, massive missed opportunity. Like, people will look back at this year, this team, and say, dude, they should have done it. They had it. Like, they had it. They had it as close as 4-0 in the 6th inning of game 2 of the NLDS. Like, they were right there. And it would be a monumental miss if they don't figure it out. And I'm not there yet. I'm not like, hey, how will the season be remembered? Like, I know I asked you that before the postseason started. But, like, you have to watch it unfold, and you have to watch the path of how these games unfold. And, like, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, there's no shame in losing to the Braves. You fucked it up if you don't win this series now. Like, bottom line, you had this thing right where you wanted it, and you let them back in it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I really don't.
Now, that doesn't mean, like, I'm not, and I know I said that, and like, it has like this like finality to it that I expect them to, as you said, like, you think game 5, so do I. Like, I don't think the Phillies win this in 4. I picked the Braves to win the series, like, and I picked them to win it in 5 games. So, like, yeah, I got this thing going 5, and we'll see what happens. I agree with your premise that this still remains a favorable week for them. And I don't really subscribe to the, like, oh, now the Braves are, you woke them up and look out now and momentum. Like, I don't buy into that, but it doesn't change the reality that was a massively wasted opportunity last night.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And look, you know me, I'm always Mr. Even Keel, right? Don't get too high, don't get too low. And I'm not gonna start dwelling on the negative of this yet, because in my mind, they still have to lose 2 more times before I start dwelling on the negative of what happened.
Yeah.
And even if they lose game 3, even if Aaron Nola gets torched, like to me, it's still not over after Wednesday night. So until there are 2 more losses in this series, I'm not going to go negative. But I hear you, and you're not wrong.
What do you expect here from Aaron Nola specifically? Forget trying to predict the game outcome at this point because that feels almost impossible. Does he deliver the performance that makes everyone say, "Oh my God, I was totally wrong about him. He really is a big game pitcher," or does he kind of, like a middling performance? Like, what do you expect here?
Well, I mean, so the one thing you got to keep in mind is, again, they're facing the Braves, and the Braves are a really good team. But at the same time, I don't think that. Look, I don't expect him to get lit up, and if he does, he does, and that's unfortunate, and it's indicative of his up and down season. But he's had his last 2 starts against the Braves were really, really good. I mean, 6 innings, 2 earned runs in September, 6 innings, no earned runs, no runs, period. In June when he faced him, he did have a start against him in May where he got hit a little bit. That was down in Atlanta. The 2 starts, the one start in June was in Philly, and then the one in Atlanta in September was in Atlanta. So 2 of his 3 starts this year have been really good against them. So I don't know. Is it law of diminishing returns that, since he's been up and down, that the next one is not good? I mean, maybe, but I know. I think he gives you a decent outing. I can't see it. If he gives you the same outing he gave you in Atlanta on September 20th, 6 innings, 2 earned runs, I think that's something that you can be happy with.
It sort of feels to me like I sort of expect him to kind of just give you that quality start, that 6 innings, 3 runs. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad. And I kind of circle back to being like, hey, lineup, hey, offense, like go win a game. Like,
Yeah.
talk about all the big names and all the money, and like, how about we show up and do it? And it's kind of probably unfair to say that. Like, I mean, they did score 4 runs last night. It's not like they were shut out. They certainly missed a lot of opportunities. Game 1, certainly not a dominant performance by any stretch, but they did what they had to do to win the game. And then you go up and down the lineup and you're like, all right, like last night, Schwarber 1 for 4. Turner was 1 for 5, but he's hitting 375 in the postseason. Bohm 1 for 3, had a big hit, 2 walks. Harper 1 for 4, he's hitting 333. Like, these numbers look okay, but like, I don't feel like there's been any one single guy that I'm like, man, like great postseason here. Like, it just feels a little disjointed to me. Like Schwarber, he's found a way to get on base a little bit. He was on base twice last night, but like, he hasn't made an impact yet. Like, he hasn't made a true impact here. Like, the Josh Bell double, I guess, against the Marlins that got things rolling. Like, yeah, that happened. I know we're only talking about 4 games, but like, they need someone to kind of like take over and win them a game offensively.
Yeah, well, I agree, and it might, Wednesday might be the day to do it. I mean, again, you don't know who you're going to get on the other side. I know that the Braves like the kid Smith Shawver a lot, and he looked good in a very, very limited amount of time earlier this year. I think he did get 1 start in the final week of the season against the Cubs, but he didn't throw long. He only threw 3 2/3. So yeah, I mean, like if that's who it ends up being, that's you got something you got to take advantage of. I mean, what's a 20-year-old what's a 20-year-old pitcher, rookie pitcher, going to feel like inside Citizens Bank Park in a playoff game, right? I mean, like, you got to take advantage of that. You're 100% right. And if it's a bullpen game, well, then take advantage of it. If it's Bryce Elder, which I don't think it's going to be, but if it is, take advantage of it. Like, these are guys that you should be able to hit without a problem. And you're right. It's going to come down to game 3 is going to be all about the Phillies offense. They should be able to score enough runs to win Phillies a game in game 3. And if they don't, then we're going to have an interesting conversation come Thursday morning.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just looking at this box score from last night, and I want to like single out one guy in particular and say like they need more here. And like, if there was a weak spot in this lineup last night, Like, I guess you look at 8-9-1, they were combined 1 for 10. That's Pache, Rojas, Schwarber. But then at the same time, like
it's also Marsh. They split that.
Marsh
right?
came in and struck out as well.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to be fair, it's 1 for 10, and Rojas and Pache both walked once, and so did Schwarber. So they were on base a collective 4 times in what, 13, 14 plate appearance. Like that's not great, but it's not like, I mean, it's not like it was a total zero either. Like, I just don't know. Like, it's just felt sort of disjointed to me. Like, as I look at this, like, Real Muto had a nice night. Castellanos had 2 hits. He hit the ball hard, obviously, in the 9th inning.
He hit the other out he made was he hit the ball hard too.
He had good swings last night. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's going to be the thing, because if you look at the other side of it, and I'm looking at Atlanta's box score, like, Ronald Acuna is not going to be hitless forever. Like, I'd like to know how many times this season he went 3 straight games without a hit. I know he made an impact. He scored 2 runs, but Ozzy Albies 1 for 4. Riley had the big one. Like, they've made theirs count here though through 2 games, whereas the Phillies, a lot of volume and not a lot of punch here, unfortunately for them.
I will say that there is something that I'll give you a positive, because other than the Braves hit the 2 home runs last night, and that's the game, right? Darno and Riley. But the Phillies seem to have something figured out about this Braves team with the way that they're pitching them. I've never seen the Braves look so. You're talking about disjointed, and the Phillies have been a little disjointed. I've never seen the Braves look this disjointed as a lineup, like this season. Like, at what point did you look at the Braves and go, man, they really are struggling to generate any offense?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't happen. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's still something there for the Phillies to kind of hang their hat on a little bit. Like, they might have figured something out about the Braves offense and a way to kind of really neutralize them. You're not going to dominate them. But
they didn't neutralize them over the last 3 innings. So, and now you're not going to have, if like velo is the plan, you're not going to have that on Wednesday night. And I know that Nola, as you pointed out, has been very good against them. But that's not what they're going to be able to do, at least for the early portion of the game. So,
by the way, to answer your question, Ronald Acuna did not go 3 straight games without a hit at all this year.
Yeah, there you go. So you can probably lock that in on your same game parlay tomorrow night.
There's a good bet Acuna to get a hit. It's going to happen.
Yeah, that feels likely. All right. Well, listen. Do you have one last thing on this quick turnaround here, or
I really didn't. I was just going to bring up the Diamondbacks and the Dodgers, and just kind of get your thoughts on that. I mean, the thing that last night, I mean, the Diamondbacks get out early again, right? But to the Dodgers' credit, they kind of like stabilized that and were able to shut down the Diamondbacks' offense for the most part after that first inning. Are you a little surprised by the inability of this Dodgers lineup to really generate offense in that game last night?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think that you and I both didn't really love the Dodgers in the postseason for pitching purposes. And certainly that played out in game 1 with Clayton Kershaw.
Right.
But last night, reasonable outing from Miller. They 4 runs. Like, you feel like, hey, we allow 4 runs at home. Like, we should have a shot to out hit that with that offense. And they just didn't. The same thing with them every year. Like, they just look tired and sort of old and just not that good to me. Like, I don't know how this team wins 100 games every year. I truly don't, because when they get to October, they look totally pedestrian. Like, it's just a totally run-of-the-mill team. Now, they have, I guess, the pitching advantage in game 3. Maybe they get out on the road and they swing this thing back, but you feel pretty good because the Diamondbacks, same deal here is like kind of what we're talking about with the Phillies. Like, they get to take 2 more really good shots with their best guys, right? Like, it'll be Kelly in game 4 and Galen in game 5 if necessary, right? I mean, so this thing sets up really well for them.
Yeah, it does. I mean, Mookie Betts doesn't have a hit yet in this series. I think Freddie Freeman only has 1 hit, although he's walked a couple times. They're getting nothing. I mean, Martinez hits the home run last night, but Muncy hasn't done anything. Hayward is without a hit so far. Like they're not getting anything from anybody else in the lineup.
Oh, I
It's just
misspoke there. Actually, I thought Miller had, when I looked at
no,
this earlier, I
yeah,
thought Miller had gotten through 4 innings. They were quick on him. He only had 5 outs last night.
Although
So
I'll tell you, what was the weird thing was they went to Gratterall.
yeah, I'm looking at that now. Gratterall in the second inning.
I was like, what do you think? Like, I'm sitting there watching the game, like, he's your best reliever, and you're going to him in the second inning? Like, I mean, I get that you're behind 3-0 and you need to stop this here, but that's wild. It was only 3-0. It wasn't like it was 5-0. It was 3-0.
Yeah, you know what's really interesting? We talked about the Arizona bullpen and how you feel like that they're a bunch of average arms. And last night, 3 2/3 innings, one hit, no runs, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts.
That's why I said the thing that when I looked at one last thing, it was not that the Diamondbacks are up 2-0 in the series.
Yeah.
It was that where's the Dodgers offense in that game?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you got to do better than 2 runs in that game.
Yeah. 6 hits, 1 extra base hit the entire night.
Yeah, they were weak last night. They were weak. They didn't do anything. I
know you're a lover of the sport. How much Diamondbacks Braves will you watch?
Well, I'll watch it. I mean, because I'm nuts, right? But
I'm 100% out on that.
But I watch everything. So
I love baseball. I do, and I love playoff baseball. But I can't. I won't be able to bring myself to do Diamondbacks Braves. I don't think. I'm not gonna lie.
You'll let it eat you that it should have been the Phillies. That's why.
Yeah, I won't be able to watch that game without being like, this fucking team. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see, man. It should be interesting. You and I will both be down there tomorrow night for Game 3, Phillies Braves, Aaron Nola versus who knows, maybe Bryce Elder, maybe not. Should be interesting. We will be back on, I guess, Thursday morning after Game 3.
Thursday morning, yeah.
Hopefully, it's all sunshine and rainbows, and we have a much more. This is given what happened last night. This show was not that negative. Like I gotta say, like this.
No, it wasn't negative. It wasn't negative. I'll tell you what. I thought you were a little bit fan moody this morning.
Fan moody?
Like moody like a fan this morning.
Yeah,
a little moody, like this sucked kind of thing.
It did suck.
It did suck. I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking it that it did. I just like to look at it and say they could have lost 15-1 last night, and it would have been just as miserable as the way it was.
Can I tell you something? My evolution as a fan, and as an observer of sports in general, like the Eagles lost the Super Bowl last year, as I guess everyone knows, and the way it played out, you get the holding call with Bradbury, and it was just, it sucked. It was miserable to watch, but like the game ended, I was upset. And like, it kind of stuck with me for a few days, but I didn't have like this like anger reaction to it. I just said that's unfortunate. I did not like that, and then like, you just kind of go on like living your life. And even last night I was like, oh, that is brutal. And like, it's annoying and like a little agitating to watch it unfold that way, I guess. But like 10 years ago, if that happened 10 years, I would have ripped my television off the wall. Like, those videos on Twitter that like are totally staged and fake, and like people are drop kicking their TVs and stuff. I never did that, but like, man, like I get it. So
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's been a long journey to just be somewhat normal. So I would say a little agitated today, a little cranky maybe, or something like that. I think that's probably about right. But
that's okay. I mean,
we're not feeling like the end of the world here. Like the building isn't on fire. I see the spark. I see the fire is on the stove. It hasn't yet spread. So we'll see, man. We'll see what happens. So for Anthony Sanfilippo, I'm Bob Wankel. You can follow Anthony on Twitter, X at AnSanPhilly. You follow me at Bob_Wankel. Make sure that you're following the show account at UpPhillies. Check us out on YouTube, anywhere that you get your podcasts. And we will talk to you on
Hey, wait.
Thursday. Yes.
Did you do you have some stuff coming out via email? Like in
Oh yes. I always forget I'm not good at self-promotion, man. It's not my thing. So yeah, when we finish recording this here in a few seconds, I will begin to write this newsletter, which again, I'm really looking forward to that. So if you have not yet subscribe to redoctoberphilly.com. It is free. It comes Monday through Friday between 9 and 10 a.m. Expected around 10 a.m. today. And that would be great. Much appreciated. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.